How about a call to order? Ryan, you okay with a call to order, or are you giving me a
I'm ready. Make it happen.
All right.
Where's your gavel?
Da-da-da, my gavel.
How's your gavel?
Da-da-da-dum. I feel like Judge Judy with this.
Don't look.
You wish you had our money.
Okay, why don't we do our Pledge of Allegiance?
Location.
Okay. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We don't have an invocation here. Oh, yes, we do. Okay. I'll do that. All right, Heavenly Father, please guide us in our discussions. Please make this retreat productive and helpful. Please help us to be respectful of each other. Please help us to keep each other awake. And above all, please help us to contribute to the value of the authority.
Amen.
We will have a roll call.
Catherine D'Angelo,
Present.
Sid Blackwelder,
Here?
Darryl Eichhoff,
Here.
Debbie Gasquey, Robert James, Lily Jean Johnson,
Here.
Marvin Keene, Joseph Lazara,
Here?
Rob Sheehan,
Here.
Bernard Silverman,
Here.
Ivory Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Okay. We have a visitor. Would you care to address the group? Other than you look very dashing in your new beard.
Yeah.
You look very, very much John Bolton-ish.
Oh, God.
Okay.
I don't look good.
No need to avoid invading North Korea or anything like that today, sir?
The warmonger.
All right. Well, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Do we have any adjustments or changes to the agenda? I'm viewing us as we go into the retreat portion of this as kind of a little bit more open-ended on the agenda. So we have a regular meeting, which is underway right now, to be followed by a executive session and then by the retreat.
Right, the only real difference here is there's no general manager's report because I've kind of been focused on the retreat, so we'll cover a lot of those items in the retreat.
Great. Okay. Any edits or suggestions to the agenda? Okay, then we will leave the agenda as it is. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the March meeting.
So moved.
Good job, Keith.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept the minutes from the March meeting. Any,
Oh, that's my.
Marvin, you're here, we're glad you're here. Any edits or suggestions? We notice that Nick Twig as a citizen is listed in the minutes, but also late arrival. All right, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Okay, the minutes have been accepted. We are up to Service Tax Committee report. Since so many of us go to so many meetings, for some of us, this will be a second round, but let's give it a shot. Annunciation update.
As I recall from our last committee meeting, the concern was synchronizing the stops with the information.
Yeah, we I think aside from a few buses that we have, still have some technical difficulties with, the annunciation system is running. There is an issue that we have not addressed yet where it kind of tells you the stop name right at the last second, right as you're passing the stop. So we're going to be working with the ride systems to kind of improve that. But at this point, it's out there, and I don't know, Brian, you have any experiences you want to relay?
The 15 North was really one of the better ones and was working. And then last week it wasn't working at all. I don't know if it was someone turned it off or because it was,
Yeah, it could have been the bus.
yeah, maybe, yeah.
Could have been the bus, but.
Yeah, and it was a different bus, it was a wrap bus, I forget what it was. It was a Seaboard, something like that.
Okay, so it's
Are we
57.
getting any sense of customer feedback on the Annunciation?
We haven't, we have the need of doing an onboard survey, so we'll probably need to ask that question.
All right. And you got some volunteers
Yes.
suggested at the last committee meeting.
Take Miss Gleason up on her offer, most likely, since the quality level of the students is
Yeah,
lacking at best.
I'd like to think
Maybe a
that,
combination thereof.
well, I'd like to think that the Annunciation and the app has made a significant difference in people's satisfaction levels with the buses, to say nothing of the new equipment itself, but I'd like to get some confirmation of that.
Well, and just by virtue of, running almost the exact same service from FY 16 to FY 17, we're still squeezing a few more rides out of it. And I would, you've got Loris and Bucksport, that's a little bit of it, but I would attribute that to the system just being easier to use and more rider friendly.
Are we gonna be, is the entertainment shuttle gonna be equipped for the Annunciation? Because that's gonna be for the tourists and people who may not
I
know.
would think so, but I need to check on that.
Well, we are still updating that, so.
Yeah,
There's so many stops on that, you're gonna have to fix the problem of the all of a sudden stop, aren't you? To have that be then enunciated?
well, I think the key is gonna be reduce the number of stops that are actually allocated in the system. Just so that it's not a run-on.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to say, 25th Avenue North, next stop, 35th Avenue North?
That's what had been recommended.
Yeah, it's
but we're
possible.
working on-
It's possible. Rides, I think the app, as far as ride system is concerned, has been pretty good. I think we've been pretty happy with that, but this is one of, if it's not their first, it's close to being their first foray into stop enunciation. So they're working on a lot of kinks too, so it's a bit of a work in progress.
So this is the first foray for the vendor entry stop
Yeah.
enunciation?
Well, I would agree with that. The app works good and the Annunciation seems to be lagging.
Yeah, we have some issues there.
All right, entertainment shuttle update.
Well, that is a goal, and
Yeah,
Michelle has worked on a sneak preview schedule.
Yeah, that's coming up next week, or a
May
week
1st,
after.
2nd, and 3rd, that's next week.
Is it May next week, or is it?
And you have the agenda
Destroyed.
on that?
This is the email out, yes,
The
sir.
email.
Yeah, it was an email that was sent through the Hospitality Association and then through the city clerks and county
Yeah, so
clerks.
it's the following week.
Okay.
It's 2 weeks out.
2 weeks, yeah.
It's
Beginning
out.
a week from
It's-
Monday,
Yeah.
so 10 days out.
You seem panicked about a week, so.
Yes, well, I feel like we just got through with finishing up March.
We've got that handful
Now we gotta do
of
April.
RCP, so at least we've had a really good, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the discussions with the hospitality side of things has been going pretty well. I actually have a meeting with Larry Bond and Vic Sharma on, just in their hat as the president of the task force, the downtown task force. And trying to elicit their help with supporting us with the council and things like that. So that should be a good conversation. The main thing that we talked about at the committee was that we are modifying the route a little bit. It won't really change expense at all, because we're still running 2 buses basically for 12 hours at each every day. But it will, when it leaves the aquarium, it will come out 29th to the bypass, 217 bypass, turn left, go south on the bypass to 10th, turn right, serve the Wax Museum and Myrtle Waves, Cal Ripken Experience, take a right on 21st, serve Grand Prix, and then go back 21st so that we're still getting the Pelican Stadium and some of those key entertainment venues.
Where's Cal Ripken? What?
It's basically at
That's not
the,
Tenth, is it?
Yes, where the
Oh,
it is
wastewater
next.
thing.
Oh,
it's
okay.
at the intersection of 10th and 21st, which is odd that those two roads intersect, but
All right.
21st takes a big curve around. I don't really expect to get a huge amount of ridership out of there, but just because, you know, people go into that facility have equipment and,
Buses.
you know, and buses and they're with their team, but you might get a few, you know, if you go down to see a ball game or something, but,
A lot of them will actually stay all day, so a lot of them may jump on the bus to go
Yeah,
somewhere else.
no, that's a
and
good
eat
point.
And grab something and come
it's
back.
something that we may wanna try to put some advertising in there somehow, talk to Cal Ripken experienced folks. The other change we're making is we're staggering the buses. One bus will start at 9 a.m. And go until 9 p.m. And then the other bus will start between 12 and 1 p.m. and between 12 and 1 a.m.
Oh, we had done that last year, it was just the hours were different.
Well, yeah, but it was basically 11 to 11.
11
You know,
to
one went
11,
out at 11, one went out at 12. So
Well,
we're
that's good
widening
for
that
the-
gap a little bit. And that was really in response to getting workers to some of these
That's a good
venues,
idea.
J1s
That's a
and
good
stuff
idea.
like that, so.
And we're going for the
So-
south,
Oh, that's right, the other alignment change is, when we come back on 21st, we turn right onto Kings Highway and go all the way to 3rd South. Take that left, serve Family Kingdom, take the left on Ocean Boulevard, and then still do our time point there at the, just south of the wheel.
well, we're doing the Family Kingdom, their amusement park and their water park. So that way we're hitting both of the water parks within Myrtle Beach.
And that actually represents an improvement in running time, because with buses are getting really caught up at the intersection of Kings Highway and 9th, making that left turn there, and go down to 3rd, it's a protected turn, and get through that intersection a little bit cleaner. So we're actually, you know, the headways are still 28 to 32 minutes in that range, so.
So where will it intersect with the fixed routes? Along, with 15 South, north of 3rd Avenue South?
Yeah, I mean, it'll share stops with both 15s along Kings Highway. It'll share stops with 10 on the 21st Avenue.
And how close will that ever get to the transfer center? Will it come down 10? Past that
No,
turn?
it'll be out there on Kings Highway, so at Kings Highway and Joe.
Oh, that's a pretty good intersection.
So,
We should go near the transfer station then?
Well, it'll be on the other
Because
side.
I
of
was,
it.
when I was on a bus, a couple of times, the bus went over there because there were people on there that wanted to go take another bus.
It'll be out there by Mr. Sub, right?
yeah, it'll be a half a block away.
Oh, that's not.
I mean, it's a little bit, I don't like putting it into the transit center because it's fare free.
Yeah.
And you're really taking a lot of ridership
Well,
off
if
of
it's
the
only a
regular
half a
route.
block, that's fine, and it
Yeah.
can be pointed out, and it
Yeah.
can be pointed out, yeah.
And so, you know, that route actually covers the new location for the Social Security Administration, which is moving from here, so.
It's already moved.
Yeah, they moved, so
Last
I'm a
week.
little
And
bit
where
concerned
where'd
about,
they go?
to
Joe White?
just above the convention center there on 21st Avenue, so that's
Oh.
gonna hurt Route
It's gonna hurt
7.
a lot of people. They have a lot of people at that
Mhm.
center right there.
Yeah.
I think they built
And now they gotta go to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
Angie Cooper moved to Myrtle Beach.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How
Oh, yeah.
come? They're losing all this tax revenue, huh?
I don't know
Well, I
what
don't
they're
know if
doing.
I don't know that the
Everybody
Social,
doesn't get
yeah,
taxes,
Social
no.
Security doesn't.
Probably
pay
not.
taxes.
Well, I heard Social Security needed more parking, they needed to service a larger population, but
They have a lineup every time I come
I know,
by.
me too, I've
I
gone
don't
in
know
there.
where they're
turned
gonna
right
get it
around.
in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the only other real issue with the entertainment shuttle is the funding for it. We've gotten quite a few inroads on people who want to advertise on the system. So we're generating some revenue that way. And I'm still hopeful that Myrtle Beach will keep us whole in response to the changeover to the user fee. Because that takes $225,000 out of their budget on the roadside. And I'm hopeful that they will. I haven't had any recent conversations with city manager, but I will be getting over there here soon just to see kind of where they're at. But certainly in future years, we need to come up with some method for funding that service.
Now, you mentioned that you'd be doing another survey. Is that a summer survey, and is it just of the entertainment shuttle, or is it of the whole route?
I think it needs to be system-wide, and I'm not sure when we can pull it off. We just have a heightened need for it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So we need to think about, I need to get with Michelle and others and figure out how we might pull that off. It would be nice to do it this summer, in August timeframe, something like that, when the ridership's at its peak. You know, and maybe we do a supplemental in October or something when it starts to die down. So we'll see how that works. That's a pretty heavy lift, and we got a lot going on.
Any more questions about entertainment shuttle?
Didn't AARP agree to assist with that?
Yes, so that's something that we just need to think about what level of effort they can bring and
It's been
You know,
a
we'll-
while to conduct the system-wide,
yeah,
to get
it's,
the true sample.
we just haven't done any planning for what that survey would look like, what the survey instrument's gonna look like, so we just need some time to kind of figure that out and then determine when we can do it. But it is a need, and, you know, it's good timing, you know, especially if we're gonna try to throw some extra routes out there in the next couple of years, you know, to get a lay of the land on where people wanna go as well. So there's quite a bit of information that we need to extract.
Certainly, you print all the copies of the survey, and I suggest you have the chairman.
I'm gonna let Rob,
Take the
I'm gonna let
chairman
Dr.
take a look at it.
Shannon
Yeah, I'd like to
weigh in
look
on
at
it.
it. Well, and Nick may be interested in looking at it as well, a new survey, you know. Okay. We just want to be sure that each question has no ambiguity associated with it.
Yeah, it definitely needs streamlining.
Yeah.
And, you know, we need to really bear down on what information we want and yeah, pay particular attention to what that survey instrument looks like.
Okay, bus stop designation at the service pack meeting. I think it was there, or it might have been finance, but I think it was service pack.
Yeah.
Service.
We had the contractors in to give us a report of the service pack meeting, and I assume, maybe falsely, that their summary report is in our packet. No, it's not, okay. But there is a summary of all of their accomplishments to date and the calendar expectations to date. Basically, we're looking at a August start for starting to see signage going up.
They say in their form, July, August,
Yep.
and it's about a month later. Everything on this page is about a month later than the one we received in January.
Yeah.
And that's because it's the data collection's taking them a little bit.
Yeah.
I asked them point blank if they were gonna ask for a budget revision, and the project manager said no. So they said they were on par. We just got another invoice. And we've started our process for procuring poles and signs. And so we need to get, next step for us is to send a letter to all of the individuals at the different jurisdictions, SCDOT, cities that would be, you know, our portal for going through the permitting process. So
And
we're on that.
Brian did articulate that where there's overlap between lines or runs, the signage will be sort of a flip, kind of a double signage to indicate two routes touch here. Or if the entertainment shuttle is one of those, that will be something that can be put on for the 3 months of the entertainment shuttle and then covered up.
Right, so the hinge signs would be for seasonal service.
Yeah.
So anything that's not operating, you can just hold the sign up, lock it, and, you know, nobody will mistake it for a stop anymore.
Are we, how far are we from approval for the sign design?
I couldn't get a definitive answer on that. My guess is they've asked a bunch of people at SCDOT and nobody at SCDOT really cares.
Good.
So that's a good thing
Yeah.
until we put one up and somebody starts screaming.
Yeah.
So our last ditch effort is to get the district engineer to buy off on it. We want a note from him saying this is fine.
Right.
And so that's their next step.
And I may have missed it, but has the board been presented, that this is the sign that we are moving forward with?
We were hoping to get it vetted first. I asked for a picture of it because the contractor has it, but we've seen it before. You all have seen it before. It's just your basic white with a rectangular sign with the international bus symbol on it. It's got the website and it's
Does
very
anybody
basic.
else remember seeing
It's
it
a
before?
long time ago.
It's been a while.
It's a long time ago, a year
I
ago.
will get it in front of you
Could we
next
do
Thursday.
that? Yeah, I'd rather us just sign off on it than continue to wait for,
I think we need to make sure. it's-
Yeah, I think, yeah, we should get a chance to see the update.
Yeah.
We'll work that. It does.
okay. So put that on the to-do list, please. Got it? Okay. Laura's Buckport surveys. Brian's done some counts on number of folks riding both ways.
Yeah, I mean, we
30.
not to get too far down in the weeds, but we, part of the grant requirement is to figure out a way to assess or to calculate the number of people who are using the system for training, to apply for work, or to maintain the job. And so we've done some surveys. We gotta go back out and do another round of them, but we found that close to 2/3 of those people that were on that route were using it for one of those three purposes. And so I pulled some stats just to kind of look at general ridership, and it's nothing crazy, but the important point here though is we had a nice little uptick in ridership in March, so I'm hopeful that the summertime will bring, some additional ridership on those two routes. 13, 14 people a day in March on the Bucksport run on just 3 trips. That's actually not too bad.
There was also a presentation at the service PAC meeting on the actual reasons people gave for riding. That's where you get your 2/3 number. And honestly, it's well above 2/3 if you consider the question a little bit more broadly. Meaning, does the bus provide a transportation medium to something that is terribly important in your life? Something as simple as getting to my parole officer, or getting to the Social Security office, or getting to...
Medical.
Yeah, I mean, those are things that are probably just as important as getting to a job. And at that point, that number rises, in my memory, upwards of 80–85% of the people are using this in a meaningful way that frankly reflects some level of poverty or some level of, I didn't have alternative ways to do that. I saw very few people saying, well, just a casual go to the store, as far as, that ridership is concerned.
Right.
But that would be just as critical. I mean,
Yes.
Who cares if we're going to the movies? I want to go to the movies
Right.
too.
Right. Well, that's why I say if we're upwards of 80% of a positive service that is not available to them otherwise, then I think we're doing the right thing.
The grant funding is based on the working,
Yeah.
Right, the grant is 2/3 over now,
yes,
close.
or higher or more. We're burning it at a higher rate, so
Oh, I see, yeah, so that's,
because of that high percentage, I mean, we're really, our first invoices are based on 40% of the ridership using it for work, and so we bumped that up considerably.
But what about the number of ridership,
It's ranges from, it was
Oh, I see, you're right there.
Got your glasses?
around
Yeah.
10 or so
End of the week.
people a day. And it's really hard to generate ridership when you're only doing 3 trips, but, I think in the next time out with the surveys, we might try to look at whether or not those routes, whether or not the timing needs to be tweaked a little bit. We overlaid those times into our system to make them,
they have some good
I won't say,
connections.
have good connections, and it worked out for how we're staffing it. But, if that's not what the most convenient time slot is, then we need to explore other ways.
Is that 31, Lars, 3120, is that what's on the bus?
That's
Daily.
days. Those are days of the
Days.
month.
Oh,
This is total ridership for the month, this is days of the month, and this is the average per day. So it's not a ton of people, but you're not gonna get a lot of ridership out of, pretty rural routes.
We get any employees out of there?
Any of our employees?
We have one
Actually, yeah, we have a mechanic that rides from Lawrence
On the 1 o'clock.
on the 1 o'clock trip, so,
Good for him.
yeah.
And we actually have a reverse commuter that rides from Conway to Loris.
Uh-huh.
In
Yeah.
addition to other people who ride from Loris to Myrtle Beach, we have a reverse commuter who's riding from Conway to Loris to work.
but if you could get that extended down to Longs and into Little River.
Yeah.
And we have missed Kitty.
Kitty is back!
Kitty is back.
Kitty is back!
Elvis is back in the room, so that everyone knows.
Right, have more ridership.
Well, I have some news on that in the,
Because I've seen nothing being.
Retreat.
I've seen nothing being said on the council about them losing money or anything.
But as far as what times are the best times to have it, I think it's more like what you said, over time is, no matter what we put there, it's gonna be the right time for somebody and the wrong for somebody,
Yeah, I had that discussion, I think, at one of the Georgetown council meetings way back where, why don't we do a 2 o'clock trip? And I'm like, well, I
Yeah.
could and probably generate some ridership, but
Yeah.
that's gonna hack everybody off who's used to using it at 3.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's just another comment. Being in the hospital, there are many nurses from Loris who would take that, because I was advertising.
you've utilized their services.
Always.
Okay, let's, in
So
the interest
even
of
in
getting
that
to our retreat.
survey, there were a few riders who said it'd be nice if they could have a midday bus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a midday bus.
On the
it's
weekends.
just- Oh, on the weekends,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, we're not running a midday trip on the
Yeah,
weekends.
they had asked for it on the weekends as well as, because
Okay.
they work.
Well, that's something we can look into.
Well, it's interesting, going back just for a moment to the Social Security office, for the people who have been using it here, it adds 2 or 3 hours to their trip to take, get the transportation, get down there, get in line, or at least an hour and a half. And this is done without much fanfare, just boom, here it is, it was in the paper the other day. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't see the Social Security Administration doing the kind of thoughtful discussion that I hear here about what is the appropriate time and place for service to meet the greatest number of persons' needs.
What was the reason for moving? Did they
They
say?
didn't give any other,
Well, they were running out of space in there, I think, is one
Oh,
issue.
yeah,
but-
around that space.
you
It
go into
couldn't
that,
be cheaper, it couldn't be cheaper rental space.
you go into that little front waiting room, it was packed each time I went in
Maybe they got a
there.
deal, huh?
Maybe. They're up there by,
Parking too? I think that's something
yeah,
to
the
do.
bank up there on the other side of the
NDSC.
convention center.
And probably they have the same situation we do, is that their clients are over there. We wanna be there because that's where our service is. and
Right.
We wanna be there because that's where the people are.
Yeah, man, the J1s are a huge part of their business, so that's all within walking distance now for them. That's
But
gonna be a
there
huge
are
hit
a
for
lot of
The
riders.
people-
J1s are gonna
Don't
go
have
straight to
cars.
Social
They
Security
don't
and
have
have their
cars
orientation
in
to.
Myrtle Beach.
Maybe.
And they don't want the J1s to go straight there because it's easier to process all the J1s at the orientation.
Well, I'm responsible for that diversion, so let's jump on to Marvin and we'll do financials so we can get to executive session and retreat. Marvin, you've got 4.5 minutes.
Oh, that's perfect because everyone was already there. So let's make it quick and easy. All right.
The month of March was a quick March.
Yeah.
Go with it, Marvin.
So we had 2 main discussion items. One was the financials, the other was the budget revision, which pretty much play hand in hand. But as we looked at the financials, we noticed a few things. Obviously, the salaries were there, but I get the sense that we have a pretty good handle on the salaries. Obviously, with the budget revision, we'll take care of a lot of those negatives. But I think we again have a good handle on the salaries, so not too much of a concern there. Vehicle maintenance and fuel and oil, we did have a bit of a discussion there. I think on the vehicle maintenance side, I think we're finally getting back in line. I don't know that if there's major things coming up, obviously more than likely will be, but as of now, we're okay. Fuel
I
and
think,
oil.
I think the bottom line on maintenance is, we have 2 more reconditionings, reconditioned buses going through the mix, which is about $100,000 worth of work. And then we have, overall, and then, we have another 112,000 for everything else through the end of the year. So,
Okay,
I think we can make it with that budget.
sure. Office supplies, a little out of whack, we can discuss that. Same issue rolling through, so I don't know if, once we make the, again, budget, as I said, hand in hand with budget revision, we'll see that come down a little bit. Interest expense, again, remember, we didn't have interest expense at all, so putting that in there obviously shows higher than our budget, but for obvious reasons. So again, with that addition of a new budget line item at 28, we should be able to obviously show coverage of it and have enough to cover for the rest of the year, even with the increase, I guess when we were thinking July, August, to increase possibly that line.
Yeah, the monthly interest will, that we're paying will go up, yes.
And anybody who's filled up their gas tank lately knows that fuel prices have been rising quite
It's down 10
significantly.
cents.
Very much so.
Just went down 10 cents.
This morning,
Yesterday, last night.
extremely volatile.
We've done this last night.
Anybody know why?
It was 250 something, it went down
On
to
Syria
240.
maybe, I don't know.
Could be.
I thought it was 260 coming up here. Well,
Motion to
We
approve.
put, in the budget revision, we put an extra 10,000 in there just to hedge it
Right.
a little bit.
So with financials, we looked at revenues as well, and obviously again, drawing down and managing that process is a year-long process, so a little bit more volatile than anything else. So a real major issue that I think we had in revenues as far as our discussion. Any questions on financials, anything?
Well, we had a recommendation to
Yeah,
revise.
he's got a
it.
recommendation for the budget revision.
Right.
Right, well, just in the budget revision, we're talking about financials though.
Oh,
Yeah, so financials, good? All right, so the next item then was our budget revision. So we had, again, an overall move in some of the money. Most of it was just essentially a wash. There was one item that, I guess Brian found some money, which is always great. So we're able to look at actually reducing it by about $13,000 with that locating those funds. So that was helpful. So I think on the screen,
Where's the total money?
Toll money.
Weren't you-
Toll credits?
Yeah,
We haven't really explored those yet.
okay,
Those are something that we do on the capital side. We would do that for operating.
all right.
so as you're looking at that, if you look at, I guess column N is really the main column that you see there. The bottom of it, you'll see the $13,000 decrease overall in your budget. And Ron and I probably would disagree with how Brian put that there, but we're good with, I guess, the main piece and where the money was really found was in that office supplies expenses. So remember from the financials, it was a little bit over and we had a little bit of a dip there, but found about, was it 42,000 in roughly in funds that were able to.
They were
go to
moved from
office
the prior
supplies.
year
Yeah.
into this year, we weren't aware of it until halfway through this fiscal year that what was gonna carry forward. So when it did, we have to bump up the revenue and the expense,
Yeah.
but then those are an offset, but then the actual office supplies, we lowered by 13,000. So you're missing that step where you see the in and out of that
49,
addition.
yeah, 42. So really, when you look at that budget revision, it's a $29,000 increase in the office supplies budget, but with that $42,000 of funding, you're seeing a negative 13 is what's happening. So notice we went from 60,000 in our,
Up to 89.
up to 89. So it was actually an increase in our budget, but again, with the.
But we had
found-
$42,000
Yeah,
worth
exactly.
of money to go into, that's where the negative.
So that's why you see a negative 13. But
Think of it as a contra expense.
exactly. Let's go with that. So you notice though, that really matches up with your dip in those operating expenses. So really that's why I said it essentially was a movement of funds from one line item to another. As you can even see with salaries, it's essentially a wash of that 40,000, which kind of wipes itself out.
I will admit that if Marvin knows what the hell he's talking about, that's great, but I don't think the rest of us quite understand what that negative 13,000 is. You might take one more stab at it, Brian,
I'll try.
or not.
So,
You wanna try?
yeah, I'll try. So the budget went up by by $29,000? Yeah?
Well,
And then
In what
you
category
found
now, in
in
office?
office supplies. So it was 60, it went up to 29?
Hang on a second, let's talk about what's going on here.
Okay.
This is mostly printing, so like an in-house printing expenses, paper, toners, all that stuff that we buy for our copiers and such. But it also includes all of these really small micro purchases that show up on our capital side of the house. All right, and so for 3 years now, we've had this issue where we had to find a place where we're putting them because in GAAP terms, generally accepted accounting principles, you put those in your operating, you put those as
They're
expenses.
expenses,
They're
yeah,
expenses, all right? So we've always had $42,000 available to us. It came from FY17. We did not spend it in FY17. And excuse me, it's for all of the expenses related to security cameras, any kind of video equipment, computers, that room in there with all the servers and all that stuff in there. And so we finally got, I think, smart and brought that budget into this line item. So there is essentially $42,000 worth of capital expenses. $42,000 worth of budget in that $89,000. So what does that leave? That leaves $47,000. So we reduced the rest of this budget from $60,000 down to $47,000 because we're not spending as much on paper and toner, hence the negative $13,000.
I got a question, Brian. Why wouldn't you break out the computer
You could.
servers and, because usually that stuff's gonna be capitalized anyway.
Well, it is and it isn't.
Some of it, some of it.
Some of it is.
The servers would be.
And it
Yeah,
still
some
can
servers
be.
would be.
And it still can be.
Yeah,
It's
I
just,
mean,
It's just too much minutia, I mean, with printers and monitors and all these things. That's what most of that stuff is, cameras, just, they're replacement items, just like generally scheduled replacements of PCs and peripherals and things like that. So they allow us to charge them to a capital grant, which is inconsistent with GAAP, but we have to park them in expenses.
same thing
Plus you
holds true
appreciate
with
it all.
maintenance. This is all funded at 80%. It's funded like it's capital, but it's clearly operating expense. So it's really the same principle. And the fact that it's all lumped together, a lot of these have multiple accounts, multiple ledger accounts associated that roll up into these numbers. So yeah, we could put a separate line item in there for computers, but
could you just drop this spreadsheet down one line so we can see what is above line 7? That's actually the definition of the years, I believe.
no, there's fair so far.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, I see what you're saying.
Does that line item include software or?
Yes.
Yes.
It does?
Yeah. We don't typically buy a lot, I mean, it's 10, 15,000 a year, but there's cameras and other things in there too.
Where was the $42,000 before it went to this?
It was in last year. And we assumed last year when we did the budget that we were gonna spend the thing. But we don't know up until the point where the budget's prepared whether we're gonna spend it or not. And if we don't spend it, we get to roll it forward.
But
So we
it was
rolled
in
it
office
forward
supplies
into
last
this
year?
year. What's that?
It was in
No, we
office
never,
supplies last
we
year?
never brought the revenue side of that budget to the
Oh,
outside.
so you're not like a state agency,
Well, no,
you
it
don't
was
spend it,
in
you don't
there.
use it.
He's
You
missed
lose
it. It wasn't in there last year.
It was in
But it wasn't
as much.
The budget
It
wasn't in
as
there.
much.
It was
The budget,
40,000.
the revenue, the budget wasn't in there for
That's
that. We were over budget on this last year because of that same issue.
It's the same thing, but there were expenses in there that we did charge to capital. They just
Yes.
weren't as extensive as they are this year. We have more, I mean, it just.
So we had $42,000 left over from last year. We
Correct.
put that in.
Correct.
And now we're down 13.
Yeah, and we don't know that at the end of the budget process, we're gonna have, it's at the time, the
Right,
timing of the
we got
thing.
months to go.
No,
Yeah.
we originally budgeted all the non-capital items in that line item, toner, for 60,000. And now that budget's 47,000.
Yeah.
So we cut there because we don't need it all.
Right.
And so the computers and the software has all been added in there with this change, just to make it look more accurate.
So it was on very flat.
Here's the grant. So that I think adds up to, is it on here? 38,420, which is the federal portion of the 47,000 that we had in there. So here it is in the grant. So we've spent about 11,000 of it. Hardware, software, security. So that's on page 15 or whatever, 14.
Are we renting the copy machines or buying?
They are leased. They are.
They're leased.
We pay them. So we pay for the copies. You lease the machine and.
But we have to buy it. Oh, they
And
don't.
we put the toners in and stuff.
Oh, I thought they
But
weren't.
the toner's included, isn't
I don't think the toner's included in the lease.
No.
it? No,
No,
no, no,
it's-
no, not even years ago it wasn't ever.
And then there's a set number of
Like
copies, you have
it's-
an additional copy
Well,
charges, and there's just
no,
little.
no,
I'm sure they would-
ticky-tacky
I'm
stuff.
sure they would generate a lease
35 years
that
ago they weren't.
would allow you to do that, but
Try to-
You'd have to
Pay
pay
more.
more for the lease.
Yeah.
They'll do it, you pay more for the lease.
Yeah.
And
this
you
way we
find
pay
out,
as we go.
and you find out that they'll supply it and you don't need all these supplies, and that toner will dry out after a while. It will.
So I have a question for Ron. Martin. So we're putting
Been there, did that.
expense items and capital items in the same budget, the same line items?
No, there are no capital. You're thinking of capital as going on the balance sheet, capitalized and depreciated.
Yeah.
There's none of that in there. It's 100%
Okay.
expense. The problem is FTA classifies them as capital in their awards, and it's not capital, it's
Okay, I got
it's
it.
operating
I got it.
expenses.
It's just how it's
Okay,
billed.
yeah.
We get 80% instead of 50%.
Okay, I got you.
And we went through that with the counties, didn't we?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, we're doing it again.
Yeah, we're back at it. It's a whole nother
But
story.
I
It's a whole nother
just
story.
I've never seen that before.
I know I'm over my 4 minutes, but just as a bottom line, so really what you're looking at is with the budget revision is that increasing the expense side of basically about 29,000. The revenue side though is also an increase of 42, so that's why overall you're looking at a net decrease of 13,000.
13.
Okay,
So that's presented to this group as a recommendation
absolutely.
from the Finance Committee that the budget be revised per our fiduciary responsibilities, that they be revised going forward to the end of October. And we've been presented a new budget. This is the revised budget, it just got handed out by Annette.
Thank you.
And if you put
So this is what's on the board right here.
Right, if you can work off the screen, that's great. If you cannot work off the screen, you take this new budget that we've been presented and you put it side by side with page 2
That's right.
of the packet, right?
It's not in color, no joke.
Not in color, not
Just like
color
some-
volume, so it doesn't make any difference to me.
Because
Cut that budget by 13,000.
Yeah, I didn't see red.
Design, man.
I know it's red.
It's more expensive to print color.
No.
We didn't want to see the
So-
red, that's all.
So we didn't cure all of the items that are over or under budget, but we feel like, you know, we essentially did this revision as what I would call an estimate to complete. This is what we think we're gonna spend through the end of the year, so those should level out, you know, given no unforeseen issues.
Could I have a motion to approve the revised budget so that we can then talk about it?
I move we accept the revised budget.
Make a motion.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Wilson, okay. So now the floor is open to talk about the revised budget. We've obviously, as a board, have to approve it or not, but
So if office supplies is going down in that 13,000, what's going up? Operating?
Salaries and benefits.
Well, you can, if you look at this,
Salaries and benefits are going up.
Yeah, at 50,000.
taking a little bit about out of admin, so, I wonder why these aren't doing the same thing, but, this is predominantly movement of staff between admin and operations. We are streamlining, some of the hours related to extra boards, as well as we have staff who are gonna go part-time. So that's, savings there. We are doing a little bit of hiring for the summer, but I've allowed Doug to not overhire because it's more expensive to pay pension than it is to pay overtime, and I think our employees are a little bit happier when they can get a little bit more overtime, so we beefed up the overtime budget. This added budget to the maintenance salaries and benefits primarily because our original budget was down one FTE equivalent, one full-time equivalent staff. We hired a technician back there. Since then, we've actually had a reduction in staff back there that should have netted that out. So this is really just to cover that overage. I think if you look at the one that's in your packet, it's like a $27,000 overrun. We're just essentially paying for that, and it should smooth out the rest of the year. And then we to help subsidize that, we took a little bit out of overtime. Tom's been doing a good job of minimizing overtime. And so then these are just kind of moving around expenses. We beefed up fuel. We created a line item for interest expense, so that's actually in there, and we're tracking how much we're paying on debt service.
So the thing that's moving over 10%, which is causing the revision, is operations.
You know, I hadn't really, we weren't really near the 10% threshold. We just did this because we had to fix this thing with the capitalized expenses, and
Interest was out.
we want to get interest on there. So
Oh, I see, okay.
and we need a little bit of a reduction. We actually need a bigger reduction than that. I'm hopeful that we can come in under this budget considerably to make the system more sustainable moving forward in years in the future. So we really got to tighten our belts and see what we can do to streamline things.
You mentioned some full-time going part-time. Part-time do or do not get benefits?
They do not, but there's a couple examples where we're going to continue paying them.
Any more questions
We'll
about
talk about
the
that in
revised
executive
budget?
session if you like.
If there are no more questions, can we call the question on the revised budget?
You can.
All those in favor of approving the revised budget as presented by Brian?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right.
As presented by Marvin.
And it should be noted that this revision is not because you're approaching the 10% mandatory level that requires the board to do this, but rather you're just doing 3/4 of the year or halfway of the year cleanup.
Cleanup. Yep.
And what did you call it? Continuing to end or something?
Estimate to complete. That's an old URS.
Marvin, anything else on finance?
That's all I have.
I will say, I had occasion to talk to Gary Loftus yesterday, or the day before yesterday, and all Gary wanted to know was Marvin monitoring the budget?
I tell him no.
It's pretty quiet, but he is monitoring the budget, and
He's always good.
Gary said, good, because that's all I want him for. But he was very pleased that we're having that level of detail. Did we get a credit card statement, by the way, that was reviewed as a part of
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about
Was
it.
that, we had no questions about credit card?
We just
Did
had the
we
one
all
item
get
that we
that?
clear up the Clemson.
No.
Remember we talked about
Marvin
that?
asked about the charges for Clemson, that was the task registrations.
Okay.
And I asked about
You didn't get it
the
with an
flyer.
on-the-base page?
That was part of the answer.
I don't think so. I think that is the
All right.
finance committee.
There was no finance charges again, zero finance.
I will accept a motion to go into executive session for purposes of contractual discussion.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All right, we are going into executive session. We'll cut cameras off and have a motion made to come out of executive session.
I mean,
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor of coming out of executive session?
Aye.
And then
All
we
those
need to adjourn the
opposed?
board meeting.
Now, we're returning to the board meeting, which we have no old business. We have no new business. We have no announcements. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Let